Vi har ingen mikrofoner og ingen højtalere, så jeg håber, I vil dæmpe jer lidt. Mia har allerede givet ordet videre til Dan Olsen Asmussen, som er formand for det jødiske samfund i Danmark.
Ja, tak for det. And I will speak in Danish, which I hope you will understand. And, dear Mayor, dear ambassadors, dear friends, usually when you reveal a commemoration plaque, the background tends to be relatively sad. But this is not the case today. I visited the organization, Polish Jewry in Denmark more than half a year ago, and I was told very specific, we do not mourn the exodus from Poland, we celebrate the arrival to Denmark. And this is what the plaque is about. Okay. Not all 2,000-3,000 Jews that came from Poland choose to stay in Denmark. Not all choose to become member of the Jewish community, but quite a few did. And this is relatively important to me, because for the Jewish community it would not have been the same today. It would actually have been significantly smaller. But also because many choose to become very active members, highly motivated, determined to contribute to our community, active in various organizations, but also part of the leadership of our community. And this is also the case today. And on a personal note, 45 years ago I was a pupil in Karolinskolen, and suddenly one day there were two kids standing in the doorway, Marek and Eva. Out of nowhere, the elder sisters had started in my sister's class. Actually, all the classes in Karolinskolen got new pupils at that time. To be honest, we were not really occupied with the background for the escape from Poland. We were mostly amused by the language challenges, but actually they quite soon disappeared. And I remember we thought it was quite cool to stay on a big ship in the middle of the harbor. That must have been really fantastic. And basically we were not able to comprehend the difficulties at that time that they had faced having to leave their country in order to somehow reboot their life in a new country. And although our new classmates had to struggle with a new language, it was probably even more difficult for their parents and their grandparents at that time. Looking back, it is my impression that life in Denmark has shown to be a good life, and the integration has been a success. We have been able to contribute to Danish society as well, and we celebrate that today. We celebrate that Denmark opened its borders to 3,000 Jewish refugees, an opening that led to a good life, and because of that we are grateful. But we are also reminded that it was possible for Denmark to open its borders and offer refuge to people haunted in their homelands. Denmark has shown great responsibility then, and should also be able to do it today, when we face the worst refugee crisis in our time. I understand perfectly that the magnitude of the refugee problem these days is something quite different. But Denmark has to fulfill its share of responsibility. It is not possible for Jewish people to ignore the needs of the refugees due to the fact that at one time in history our family has also been refugees. And then allow me to turn to Mr. Ambassador Rafał Wisniewski. You have shown to be a true friend of the Polish Jew in Denmark, shown to be a true friend of the Jewish community in Denmark. You have had the moral courage to face a dark chapter in recent Polish history, to speak out that it was wrong to reinvent the cynical political tool of anti-Semitism 45 years ago. We thank you for your contribution to this symbolic event, and we thank you for your friendship and your support, and wish you all the best on your next assignment, which will unfortunately be somewhere else. Okay.
Oh my.
Yes, and Mr. Ambassador, His Excellency Rafał Wisniewski from the Polish Embassy. There you are. It could be the last speech, or it could be. Don't start.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends. Almost 50 years ago, a hideous campaign initiated by the communist regime in Poland led to the forced emigration of almost all the remaining Polish Jews. This took place in a country which the Jews themselves, in spite of all problems and tensions, had used to call Paradisus Judeorum, or simply in Hebrew, Polin. Before the Second World War, Poland was inhabited by 3 million Jews, and its capital, Warsaw, was the home of the second biggest Jewish community in the world, after New York. Another Polish city back then, Vilnius, was known, and not without reason, as the Jerusalem of the North. But sadly, Poland was also the place where the Nazi German Third Reich committed the genocide on the Jews on an almost inconceivable scale in the first half of the 1940s. In spite of all this, when the struggle for power reached its peak, some members of the authoritarian regime decided to appeal to the lowest human instincts. It's no excuse that those people were always, also on many other occasions, eager to seek out enemies amongst their own society. Aristocratic bourgeoisie elements, rich peasants, the intelligentsia, independent thinkers among scientists and artists, believers, students, workers demanding the right to form independent trade unions, and finally, members of the illegal democratic opposition. For almost half a century of communism, the undemocratic authorities in Poland, upheld by Soviet Moscow, always sought out enemies whom they would deprive of their development opportunities, right to education, a normal working life, chances of going abroad, or even leading a decent life in their own country. Sometimes they would simply put them to jail or have them executed in the full majesty of the law. For this reason, I feel very honored to be standing here in front of you today as a representative of a democratic, sovereign country striving to take care of all of its citizens. A country where a small Jewish community is slowly reviving and where the anti-Semitism of the few is definitely outnumbered by the broad circles of society who show a big and growing interest in the history and culture of the Polish Jews. And finally, a country with the courage to confront itself with the dark sides of its own history, also those concerning our common Polish-Jewish history. I'm very grateful to your organizations, especially to the Association of Jews from Poland and Denmark, that you turned to the embassy of the free and democratic Poland with your proposal of cooperation on the creation of the commemorative plaque that we will see in a while. I thank you for the confidence you showed us by this gesture. I would also like to thank you for the trilingual inscription on the plaque. Not only does it express the truth, it's also a symbol of a triumph of hope and the victory of decent people against the unjust. It is my sincere hope that in the months and years to come, you and we will be able to meet at this memorial to remember both the difficult and painful moments and the moments that gave reason for optimism. Finally, I'm very grateful for your efforts, in spite of your sometimes rather difficult memories, to propagate knowledge about Poland, about Polish history and culture in Danish society. These efforts of yours underline how big a shame those people brought upon themselves who denied you or your families the right to lead a normal life in your own country, and who wanted to deprive you of the right to feel, to a small or a bigger degree, but nevertheless, Polish. I know that many of those who came to Denmark in those days paid an enormous personal price in connection with the horrible experience of forced emigration. This makes my gratitude to be able to be here with you today all the greater. I would also to direct my words of gratitude to the leadership of the Jewish community in Denmark, not only for the cooperation in connection with today's ceremony, but also for the 5 years of cooperation during my stay in Denmark, for your invitations to the yearly ceremonies in the synagogue in commemoration of the Holocaust, for the cooperation in connection with the Festival of Jewish Culture. Jews in Denmark are one of the natural links between Poland and Denmark. The Polish embassy will always open its doors and heart to all those inhabitants of this country who feel any kind of connection with Poland or a need to cooperate with our country. Last but not least, I would like to thank the Danish national and local authorities for your presence here today, but also for what your predecessors and the whole Danish society accomplished back then between 1969 and 71, both in your personal lives and as a group. Thank you very, very much for everything you have done to make this extraordinary initiative a success.
O, jak już idę sąd, panie ambasadorze, niespodzianka, polski jeszcze pamiętam. Mimo, że my łodzianie powinniśmy się rozumieć do słów, to ja chcę powiedzieć panu tak. Dziękuję za pana jakby to powiedzieć, upór, fantazję, za to wszystko, co Pan dla nas zrobił. I dzięki Panu, Pan nam umożliwił, że ta płyta jest położona teraz w tym miejscu, gdzie należy. Dzięki takim ludziom jak Pan, jak ma Pan tutaj teraz swoich, nie wiem, nie powiem pracowników, ale ludzi z ambasady, prawda, którzy są inną generacją. Nie myślą teraz, jak myślały te władze w latach 60. Polska nabrała całkowicie innego wizerunku tak między nami. I myślę, że dziękując Panu, a zarazem niestety osobie, której to nie ma Cię znaleźć, czyli Joannie Tamborskiej, która też dużo pracy podłożyła, to myślę, że mówię w imieniu nas wszystkich teraz. Jeszcze raz właśnie chcę powiedzieć z całego serca. Dziękuję Panu bardzo i mam nadzieję, że z Pana następczynią ta współpraca nie będzie się układała gorzej.
Ja.
W tym miejscu cumował statek hotel Afsløring, który był pierwszym domem dla ponad 2000 polskich Żydów przybyłych do Danii w latach 69-71 z powodu kampanii antysemickiej prowadzonej przez komunistyczne władze z Polskiej Rzeczpospolitej Ludowej.
Doskonały tekst.
I kan se bladet lige om.